Hey there, my name is RayGTV, and this is going to be a bit of a uncomfortable video for me to make, but it's ultimately one that I really feel like I need to make, given what has happened over the past month or so, and also some questions some people have been asking me as well. So first of all, let's start off with myself, since I feel as though that there's a lot floating out about me that I feel like I need to address. Even though I have already addressed them plenty of times before, and I'll get to why in a minute. If you've ever tried searching my name up on Twitter or YouTube, you might have come across something that said along the lines of the truth about RayGTV or RayGTV is a pedophile. And then it shows all these screenshots of me supposedly sending some weird ass art about Hilda and me making and sending inappropriate messages about her. Just some pretty disgusting and very concerning stuff about me. And I wouldn't blame someone who just looks at these and takes it at face value because it is some pretty nasty stuff. I mean, how hypocritical is it that the guy who exposed Tristan Zepeda for being a pedo ends up actually being one myself? It is a serious allegation that I don't blame anyone for wanting to take lightly. This has been something I've addressed many times over the past few years, but it has been especially a discussion of topic ever since what happened with Tristan Zepeda. So I've just decided that I'm going to make a third and final video about it and give some more context as to what really happened. In around 2019, when I was 15, I was good friends with someone who I nicknamed Eve. Eve, I believe, was someone who I think was a part of my Hilda the Adventurer server. And though there were differences between each other, we did ultimately get along well and became good friends. So good friends, in fact, that we both ended up deciding to share the passwords with each other for the now defunct Daily Dose of Hilda Twitter account, aka the account that is now my main RayGTV page. We were good friends, but up until Eve decided that he wanted to be a little too close with me. And he started to ask me to be engaged in some really questionable and weird shit. And whenever I tried to say no, and I really did try to say no, most of the time he would just threaten me that he was just gonna hack my account if I don't do what he says. So stupidly, instead of just walking away and changing all my passwords and everything, I just ended up agreeing to do those things because I was afraid that, something bad was going to happen to me if I don't do what he says, because he had already mentioned to me prior to all this happening that he was supposedly part of the hacking community. All of that ended up being for nothing though, since he still went out of his way to hack my account, and he wasn't willing to give those back to me until I, 1, sent a picture of myself crying, 2, gave him $200 worth of Bitcoin, or 3, send self-convicting messages of myself. And you can probably guess which one I picked. And when you know it, stuff starts to come up about me on Twitter where everyone's saying, oh, Ray's a pedo, Ray's likes Hilda. Even though most of that only happened because I was groomed and blackmailed into sending those kind of things and having those conversations. However, there's one thing I want to get out the way first. I know that over a lot of time, I've largely put the blame on the blackmailer for making me say or do these kinds of things. But something that I feel like I should be doing more often is also taking responsibility for myself. I've already said this on my open letter to Hildecourt video, but even though I was pressured and blackmailed into sending or saying these kinds of things, at the end of the day, I had every opportunity to walk out and just not engage in this type of activity, and I didn't. At the end of the day, I still sent some of them, and there's nothing that I can do about it now. It especially didn't help my case since I was also a part of the Star vs. the Forces of Evil Discord server when I was just 13. A server that, mind you, when I first joined, had multiple NSFW channels in it. And the admins themselves literally admitted to other people that they do not care if anyone under the age of 18 joins one of these NSFW servers as long as they don't admit to being underage on the actual server. And while they did try a lot to make sure there was no baby like content posted in these channels, people were free to post all of the lolicon stuff that they wanted, including the infamous Between Friends comic. In fact, they didn't even get rid of these channels until they decided to apply for Discord partnership, aka that little logo that you see on the server's name next to it. Yeah, if they hadn't gotten rid of those lolicon content that on their freaking server, then their shit would have just been completely deleted. And because I was just a little horny dumbass who didn't know any better, I saw absolutely nothing wrong with what they were doing and thought it was the weirdest thing that they had to do this. My logic was basically like, oh, I'm 13, Star is 14, so that means it's completely okay to simp for her. And because we're all just stupid little horny teenagers like myself, right? Right? Yeah, well, no. It was only years after I left the server that I realized these were not just little kids sharing these things. These were adults in their late fucking 20s. In fact, once Discord finally shut down the NSFW channels from the main server, another admin went out of their way to invite me and a bunch of other members from that Discord server onto another server for the sole purpose so that they could just keep sharing these kinds of things. And more of my friends who were actually just grown-ass adults inviting me to their little fun parties like to fucking Epstein Island just kept inviting me to these servers and convincing me that absolutely nothing wrong was going on over there. And it wasn't until like 2 years later when I joined a 12 Forever server when I was like 15 and I was dating someone who was about 18 to 19 at the time. They saw that and they went, "Hey, Ray, I don't think this is right. I think you're being a victim here." In fact, I'm just gonna go out of my way and just list out a bunch of people who were involved in this Epstein-esque ring that I was manipulated into being involved with at a young age. Nanopolka, Awesome Audie, RHMetal88, G-Chan, Ellen Drio, Stormfather, Hayden, Cartoon Dove, Truler, Neffy, and way more that I can't list here because all of this happened about 6 to 5 years ago and they've since all either left the server or just gotten away with it. That or just they never mentioned it to anyone. In fact, let's talk about Neffy. When I was 14, I was actually dating someone named Neffy who was from the server. And Neffy at the time was, I think, about 17 to 18 years old. I didn't know at the time that having that big of an age gap at the time was kind of weird as hell. And she knew. But despite that, she still asked me to date anyway. Of course I said yes because at the time I was being manipulated and groomed by the individuals I've listed here as well as some other people into thinking that making comments such as "Star Butterfly is hot" and other such comments was completely okay to say in a server full of adults. They were completely okay with it since they basically felt the same way. So what was the harm in her dating someone who was about 3 to 4 years younger than her? As I put it in my own words, love doesn't have an age restriction, Neffy or Marco fan. Oh, how naive I was. To her credit though, she did eventually break up with me about a few weeks after, which I was initially upset about because obviously a stupid 14-year-old is going to be upset at a girl who breaks up with him. And there was nothing inappropriate that we exchanged between each other, to my knowledge. So at least she realized that what she was doing was wrong, I guess. Which leads me to a second incident involving someone I met through Hildecord. I'm not going to say who this individual is in particular because I'm pretty sure their existence has been wiped off the internet completely. He approached me one day and we eventually became friends after some back and forth. When I turned 15, he offered to do some explicit roleplay with Johanna as a sort of birthday gift, as he put it in his own words. Which then kind of spiraled into this whole mess of doing other explicit role plays involving other people and other Hilda characters. Which then turned into this serious romantic relationship with him, even after he had turned 18 in the same year that I was only 15. We had done e-sex roleplay. He would sometimes voice call me and moan for me in the microphone while we were both doing our thing. And unfortunately, I decided to also send him a nude as well. All of this when I was just 13 to 15 years old. Which finally leads to these messages you might have seen popping around. Eve essentially knew that I was doing all these things with other types of people, especially with the Hildecord guy, as well as some people from the Star Versus Discord, fully knowing that I was a victim of online sexual abuse as a minor, and he took advantage of that by giving in into his sick and disgusting fantasies. And when I tried not to give in, he resorted to trying to blackmail me. You ever wonder why he censored his own name in these screenshots? Yeah, well now you know. So, I know for a lot of you out there, especially longtime viewers of mine right now, you guys might have some questions about this whole thing. Why didn't I come out about the Star Versus Discord or the Hildecord guy sooner? And why are you painting this as if it's your fault? To answer the second question first, again, while I have been putting a lot of the blame towards Eve for the whole I'm a pedo situation, the truth is that no matter what excuse I try to make, at the end of the day, I still did send some of those things, victim or not. And to that, I'm sorry. I am not a perfect person by any means, and I would be lying if I said that being in these Lolicon supportive groups at a young age did not have any psychological or mental issues on me whatsoever. In fact, in the same Hildecord video I mentioned earlier, that because of these grown people and because I was sexually manipulated into thinking this kind of behavior was okay, I had a very hard time trying to cope and seek therapy so that I could finally be a normal person and not just fall right into degeneracy like so many people lately have. And even though I'm doing a lot better in making sure that I never cross that line or be involved in these groups ever again. Ever since the whole Eve thing happened and I finally broke up with the Hildecord guy in around 2020, once I finally realized that what I had gotten myself involved with was fucking wrong, I'm still ashamed to admit that it's still a mental health issue that I'm going through to this day. And I'm still having to seek treatment for it, thanks to what happened so many years ago. I've taken a lot of steps to make sure that nothing like this ever happens to me again or to other people I'm with. It's better to seek help when I was still young so that kind of thing never has to cross into my adult life ever. Which is why I can guarantee you that you will never see any more messages about me making inappropriate messages about minors past the age of 16. It wasn't okay then, and it's not okay now. I can make all the excuses that I want to, but again, I did still ultimately agree to participate in these things or send some of these things at that point in my life, and so I just feel like I should come here and take full responsibility of that and just say, I'm sorry. I had every opportunity to block the guy, and I didn't. I'm sorry if my actions might have hurt anyone then and now. I'm sorry to those who felt betrayed seeing these messages. And most importantly, I'm sorry for not distancing myself from the situation at the time. I know all of this happened about 4 to 6 years ago, and I can just convince those who aren't willing to forgive me that you're wrong, and I can keep making excuses forever and ever about it, but I'm not. You have the right to form your own opinion about all of this, and if it feels like you still can't trust me because of this, then I completely understand. My actions have definitely hurt people. I've lost really good best friends because of this, and no matter what I try to do or what I try to say, it'll probably never be enough to satisfy some people. And I'm completely okay if some people feel the need to distance themselves from me because of this. I deeply apologize for my actions, and I promise that there has and will never be another incident like this to happen again. Especially since then, I've cracked down a lot on bad offenders and protecting my community, which, because most of my videos contain something Hilda related, means that most of my community is going to involve minors. Just fairly recently, actually, I had to ban someone off my Discord server because they had shared NSFW art to another minor, And that minor got upset at me, understandably, and so I had to ban the offending user because of that. Even people who may have shared YouTube videos to people under 18, which may or may not contain inappropriate subjects in them, I had to warn people of as well. I absolutely do not take the subject of minors in NSFW lightly. Not one bit. So I hope to at least some who are watching this right now come to forgive me for the actions of my past and see me as the kind of person that I am now. And to answer the first question about not coming out about the Star Discord, it was just mainly because I was scared. In the same year that I broke up with the Hildecord guy, I also tried exposing him for the things that I mentioned here. That did not go over well for me at all, as all I got instead was death threats, harassing messages, and mass blocking / accusations made about me, some of which had literally no backing to them whatsoever and were just kind of there to make me look bad. So that's why up until now, I've been quiet about the whole Star versus Discord situation, because I was afraid that the same thing was going to happen too. And honestly, it might still be. The reason I'm doing it anyway, though, is because it's the right thing for me to do. In an age where all these big creators and influencers are finally being exposed for their true behaviors, I feel like it's only right to come forward about my own experiences of sexual abuse and manipulation. Since, as much as I've tried to make it seem like I've been completely okay this entire time, the truth is that I'm not. I am not at all, and I've been really, really hurt because of what happened. I'm hurt that these people got away with their actions 6 years later, and I'm hurt that instead of holding these people accountable, they instead to hold me for as such because I'm already the supposed pedophile in this situation. So come at me all you want, Star Discord, but at the end of the day, I'm speaking on behalf of my very real and very true experiences, and how it still negatively affects me to this day. Now let's talk about 21-year-old Tristan Cepeda. For those who don't know who he is, he was a popular Hilda fan artist whose main work consisted of making OC art and fanfics related to the show. I recently exposed him on June 22nd for covering up the fact that he had sent NSFW art to a minor who was just 16 at the time. And he just straight up admitted it to me about it by saying that he was, quote, so exhausted and tired from work. Obviously, this did not go over well with most people, and it became this huge bag of mixed opinions about him, with some defending him, calling this just a really horrible accident, to people like me actually wanting to hold him accountable. So over this time, I have tried talking with him and just making sure that he never involves himself around minors again. Admittedly, at the time, I did not find the idea of wanting to leave him behind a very happy one. I mean, he was my best friend after all, and the least that I could have done was provide him with some resources that he needed to get. Because no one actually tried to help me, but obviously this is on a much more serious level because Tristan is 21. We talked, and I initially promised that as long as he would go through my demands, get the help that he needs, and make sure he doesn't involve himself near minors again, that we could still sometimes keep in touch. That was until days later on the 27th, where he admitted to having e-sex with a Hilda chatbot and having a lolicon issue. Yeah, you can probably guess what happened. I completely cut ties with him. I gave him the resources that he absolutely needed to get, and from there I just stopped trying to talk to him altogether. And that's where the story pretty much ends. To be honest, while I've never thought of him as a particularly problematic person before this, I always felt there was something a little bit off about some of the stuff that he makes. Especially art that he would make of Hilda X Anthony, aka his original character. I remember back in September of last year, he sent me one that was of his OC and Hilda just completely making out mouth to mouth, and when he showed me this, I just straight up admitted to him that it was questionable. Very questionable. And uncomfortable, since it honestly reminded me of a self-insert. Then there was this one time where I caught him liking a piece of fan art of an aged up Frida that was suggestive, to say the least. That in itself is a really, really big gray area. It's technically not pedophilia because they aged up the character, but also they aged them up for the sole purpose of being sexualized. Do you not see how questionable that is? And like I said, I did not hold back about my thoughts about this either. Because as I put it in my own words, if I try to like a piece of suggestive Hilda art and someone calls me out on it and I try to make the excuse that she's just aged up and older, do you think that would go over well for me? You can probably guess the answer to that. So, credit where credit is due, he did end up apologizing and unliking the post afterwards. In my opinion, there is a very big difference between a character being aged up in a canon looking attractive versus when they are aged up in a piece of fan art solely for the purpose of looking attractive. The reason that it is okay for me to simp for adult Marcy from Amphibia, for example, and not with Frida, is because adult Marcy and the rest of the trio in that show were aged up in order to progress the story. They were made with the intent of trying to progress time and story with them, and not to put them in any suggestive manner. Intent is really, really important when it comes to aged up characters. So, in my opinion anyway, if you're into a character who has been aged up, who wasn't already aged up in the show or in the canon, for the sole purpose of being sexualized, then you're weird. I'm sorry, it may not be technically pedophilia, but it's still fucking weird. The thing with saying technically not pedophilia is that it's technically. So, it's still weird, questionable, and kind of disgusting. I want to end this video off by addressing one more thing I had with someone, since it's a bit of an update to what happened before, and for the purposes of this video, I feel like it is necessary to share. Around the same time as the allegations about me supposedly being a pedo were out, there were also allegations that I had doxed a Hildecord owner. This, unfortunately, is 100% true. Essentially what I did in 2020 when I was still in the Hildecord server about a couple years back, I had saved an image of his face that he had posted on the server, and I used that to create a parody of the Yandere Dev meme, and posted that onto the Hilda subreddit in a kind of, how fast could I be banned from the Hilda subreddit? As you can probably guess, I did get banned from it, and the Hildecord owner who I took his face from was understandably fucking furious. I didn't realize the severity of my situation until I literally got my account warned by Reddit themselves, and a whole debacle that went down that ultimately resulted in him stepping down from the server. I'll be honest here, I was fucking stupid. What was this meant to do? Oh yeah, take that, Hildecord. Oh yeah, take that. Like, no, I just straight up shared his face. Something that was meant for only the Discord to see at the time and not for anywhere else. They are not Yandere Dev. So after a while, I finally realized, oh, this is wrong. I immediately tried reaching out to him and apologizing for literally everything that happened, but it seems like he wanted nothing to do with me, understandably so. It resulted in me rightfully being called out for it and being banned from the Hilda subreddit for years. That was until December 27th of last year, 3.5 years since I was banned, when I submitted my appeal and apologized once again about the situation. And after some back and forth, my ban was finally lifted. And since that older Hildecord owner is still a part of the Reddit mod team to this day, I guess that means that everything managed to work out in the end. But again, I just want to say I'm sorry. It's been 4 years and you still don't want to forgive me about what happened. That's completely understandable. I just hope you're doing okay out there, and I wish you the best of luck. Contrary to some beliefs, however, I did not try to expose any more information besides his face, like phone numbers, addresses, nor did I even have that information to begin with. I just made a really stupid meme because I have saved an image of his face from Discord. That is all I have to say for now, and honestly, I'm a little nervous about putting this video out since I have no idea what the response will be like, but ultimately, I feel like it's the right thing to do. And you all deserve to know about it as well. I hope you all have an amazing week, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.